Well, relations are definitely complicated, and they are complicated more for 200 years. When the Russian Empire first ever entered Georgia and occupied Eastern Kingdom and then the Western Kingdom, it was at the beginning of the 19th century, and since then Georgians are fighting for their independence, for the liberty, for justice, for being Georgians, you know, and especially for last, well, everyone is aware of Soviet period when many Georgians were arrested, they were sent to Siberia, they were just kidnapped and murdered and so on and so on. It was a Soviet times and Soviet regime, but for the last 30 years we are seeing the same continuancy of the Russian Empire and Soviet Union by this, let's say, modern regime of Putin, because as you know, the 22% of Georgian territory which are recognized by United Nations are occupied by Russia. Even this occupation is continuing every day. The citizens of Georgia are kidnapped, murdered, killed, and so on and so on. And definitely for majority of Georgians, vast majority of Georgians, Russia is occupier. And as we see this, we call the party, ruling party in Georgia, which is formally it's called Georgian Dream, but we call it now a regime, because this regime came into the power in 2012, and as we believe and how it's worked, they step by step they were trying, and they are trying to bring Georgia back to modern USSR, to the orbit of Vladimir Putin, and to somehow to stop the integration of Georgia to European Union and to NATO, and that's the main goal of Kremlin. And as you remember, even in 2008, basically the war, the recent Russian-Georgian war started just because Georgia was very near to the membership of NATO, to the MAP, so-called MAP. And then Kremlin decided to change the style, I may say, and now, not now, but in 2012, they supported this group to come to the power. And once again, this group is trying to, well, what they are trying to do is to show to the try at least to show to the citizen that EU integration and NATO integration can cause same what Russia did in Ukraine. So Russia would start war in Georgia, so it's much better and peaceful to stay neutral. And we, opposition and civic activists, we are saying that it's impossible to be neutral, because if we would not have friends as United States or European Union and many other countries from the civilized world, we would be back to USSR much earlier. Because if you are aware, the occupied Abkhazia, right? It's not a part of Russia at the moment, it's not annexed, but it's occupied, and they basically live back in USSR. And we want freedom, we want to be a part of a common European family with the same values and principles of democracy, and it's very important, especially it's important for the younger generations, and we are trying to do our best to return Georgia back to the path of EU and NATO integration. Yes, the occupation continues every day, especially it's in central part of Georgia, so-called South Ossetia, we call it differently Samachablo, which is bordering with Russian Federation's Republic of Alania, so-called North Ossetia. And this occupation continues every day. The Russians are trying to, and doing this for the last 12 years actually. Before this regime, they were doing the same, of course, but very slowly. because the previous government and Georgian society were preventing them to do it faster, and it was we were involving international monitoring missions and so on and so on. But for the last 12 years, after this regime came to the power, the occupation continues faster and faster, and they have much more and wider administrative occupation borders, and every day they are kidnapping Georgians, just let's say just normal farmers who have their business in the field. They are risking every day, because if they are near to this occupation border, so-called occupation border, they can be easily kidnapped. They are taking them to their military base. They are unfortunately and very sadly raped, killed, or bargained back for some amount of money or for some amount of alcohol even. And those people who live at this administrative occupation border, I may call them heroes. Those who didn't left these territories, they are still there, and basically they are only people who are preventing further occupation, because this regime is silent. They don't want to risk their relationship with Kremlin and with Putin, so they are silent, basically. Well, once again, this regime was having a mask, and step by step they were trying to convince people, citizens, in different stories and narratives, explaining why EU is not suitable for Georgians, why Russia is better, and so on and so on. But they were doing it step by step. Why now? Because firsthand, this ruling regime, the Georgian Dream, kidnapped, stalled elections on October 26, when Georgians went for election. All of us wanted something new, something more pro-European, let's say, pro-Western, let's say. They just kidnapped these elections, stole this election. Basically, what they also did after these elections, which are not recognized by international community, it's not recognized by majority of Georgian citizens, they decided to just stop Georgian integration into the NATO. And a couple of years ago, Georgian citizens had a plebiscite, the referendum, when majority, as I remember correctly, more than 80% of Georgian citizens declare it's our aspiration that Georgia must and have to become a member of European Union and NATO. And we even have an article, number 72 in Constitution, Georgian Constitution, which highlights, underlines that the main aspiration of Georgia and Georgian people is to join these institutions, common European family. And after these elections, this regime declared that no, we are stopping this integration, we don't need European Union anymore. Even, you might heard that even United States had very strict statements in this regard, and basically I just recently talked with the ambassador of United States in Georgia. US also stops funding of Georgian government for almost $100 million. And it's not only the funding, United States and majority of EU member countries were the solid ground for Georgia and its Georgian independence and development of Georgia as a stable European type of country for the last 33 or 34 years. So majority of Georgians know that clearly, and we are very thankful for that. And we are trying, why Georgia wants to become the member of EU, right? It's not only a security reason, it's not only the economic or fiscal reasons, but it's those values, those principles on which European nations, European community, European Union as an institution is based on. And this regime is trying to steal this decision of this aspiration of Georgian people and drive Georgia back to USSR. So that's why people, citizens, went out in the streets of the capital and in many other streets, Batumi, Kutaisi, Zugdidi, and so on, protesting and saying, no, we don't want this to be continued. We want new elections, and we want to continue our path towards integration in European Union and NATO. Since Russia started war in Ukraine, we have more than 1.5 million Russian citizens who came to Georgia. At this present moment, it's more than 300,000, as you mentioned, staying in Georgia. Having a resident permit, and all of them know clearly that they are representing the regime, they are representing the country which is occupying Georgia, which is involved in war in Ukraine, which is basically occupies as well Belarus, using the local mini dictator, mini Putin in Belarus. And well, Georgians are very friendly people. If you come as a tourist to Tbilisi, you will see a monument which stands on the high mountain in Tbilisi. We call this monument Kartlis Deda, which means Mother of Georgia. In one hand, she has a piala, it says it's a special glass full of wine, and in the other hand, she has a sword, and this is it's a symbol that if someone will come to Georgia as a friend, we are welcoming, but if somebody will come as an enemy, we will have a sword. Of course, the opinions are divided in the society. Some in majority are very against for those citizens of Russia to even stay and maintain in Georgia. There are some people who think, who believe that these people are flying the regime in Russia, especially the younger males, especially who don't want to go to war. But anyway, we agree that they are occupiers, and they know that they are occupiers, because in every situation, Georgians will remind them that you are occupier. Well, Georgia is on the crossroad of many empires throughout its history of the mankind. So there are many names for Georgia. Georgia is a Latin name, of course. There are some scientists saying that it's coming from Greek roots, some think that it's come from French roots later in the medieval times. There is Arab names, Turkish names for Georgia, but especially we don't like, and we are a little bit aggressive when Georgia is called Gruzia, because it's typical Russian name, and we don't really like that. And I think it was first Lithuania who officially declared and changed the name of Georgia to Sakartvelo. And Sakartvelo means the land of Georgians in Georgian language, and it's a very beautiful name actually, and plus nobody will misunderstand with the state of Georgia, because it was a story in 2008 when Russia started war in Georgia that some ladies were calling, not ladies but just some people were calling to CNN in Atlanta asking why US government allowed Russian tanks in Atlanta, in the state of Georgia. Of course, Sakartvelo is more suitable, more beautiful. It's in our hearts, and we would really appreciate and love if everyone will call Georgia Sakartvelo, but especially don't call us in Slavic languages, especially Gruzia.